Well, John, we've been trying to do this for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
Talk about all things animal shelter. And I know it's a big operation over there. I was invited to come to your all-staff meeting a couple of weeks ago, and it was a good experience. You got a great group of employees over there. But you do a lot of things over there that I think the public just really doesn't realize, a lot of considerations that have to be made when dealing with animals. Tell us a little bit about the shelter, just an overview, and how long you've been the director over there, and some of the changes you've brought forward.
Well, I've started in February 2014, so I've been here a little over 11 years now. And it's been a lot of changes from start to finish. And you know, I tell everybody, we're not finished yet. We've got a lot of things that we want to do and to help this community with their animals. As you said at the all-staff meeting the other day, you got an opportunity to meet our team. We've worked really hard to build what I think is one of the best teams in the state for animal welfare and how we treat our animals and what we're trying to accomplish. They're passionate, they're strong, they're a bunch of good kids, and we built a real family atmosphere over there that I think helps. We got a lot of challenges. As you know, there's a lot of things that have to happen in that building to keep these animals moving in and out and get adoptions up, things like that. So it's a fun operation, and we get to learn a lot about our community, and that's our goals. You know, is always try to help our community make it better and safer.
Yeah, that was one thing I noticed in meeting the employees over there. They all seem really motivated, really passionate about what they do and about the animals, whether it be cats or dogs. And I know you have close to 400 animals over there. Right
Yeah,
now?
at any given time, we could be responsible for 300 to 400 different animals. Some of those are in the building, some of those are in the vet clinic, some of them are at offsite with fosters or some other set operations, and we work with some rescue organizations too. But yeah, at any given time, we're caring for 300 or 400 animals, and it can be a lot. That building's not made for 300 or 400 animals, as you know.
So it's a lot of work. People don't realize that when they want to volunteer, and thank goodness for our volunteers.
Absolutely,
they're a huge help to us.
Absolutely.
But say, hey, I'm going to go play with the puppies, or I'm going to go pet the cats. It's not exactly like that.
No, it's a lot, and it's, you know, we try to tell people going through interviews, and even, you know, we interview volunteers before they come on board and do an orientation with them as well. The work's hard, and it's rewarding, but it's hard, and the staff realizes that, and that's some of the turnover that we talk about. You know, the challenges that we have with when we hire new staff is they come in and expect we're going to play with puppies and kittens all day, and it's not all that. Our staff does a lot of things. They do a little bit of medical care. They do a little bit of, you know, the animal welfare coordinators. They do a little bit of medical care. They do a little bit of customer service. They do a little bit of cleaning. Obviously, we do a lot of cleaning and care for the animals. So there's a variety of things that they're responsible for. It's not just as simple as come in and play with the puppies all day. And same for volunteers. But we also try to we want to make it a fun place to come and volunteer. So we do a lot of things. They do get to do a lot of interaction. It's great for the dogs, particularly the dogs and even the cats, to get out of their kennels, out of their enclosures, and spend some time with people. It helps them get ready for adoption and get socialized. So
right. So y'all have a special program over there for the female inmate crew.
Correct.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so a few years back, we had the opportunity we had a male crew that was coming when I took over the shelter, and we've added, we were asked if anybody was interested in having a female crew. We now work 2 female crews, and they're there 7 days a week doing the basic cleaning of the kennels. We've developed a reentry program for the female inmates. So once a week or so, we'll train with them on basically a portion of the job for a certificate for them. We taught pet health earlier this week, and some of them got to learn about all the different diseases and things that can go through the animal shelter, because the next week we'll teach animal husbandry, and part of that certification program will teach them how to prevent those diseases from spreading, how the proper cleaning techniques are, and things like that. And what we hope is when they leave the program, when they get out and go back into the world to get jobs and things like that some of that education that we were able to provide them will help. And they're such a great help to us. We couldn't do what we do without the inmate crew that works for us and comes over and takes care of those animals every day.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and they work hard.
They do,
and they're passionate about it as well.
They are, and that's one of the things. And I'm not picking on the male crew, but it was a little bit different. We had the male crew; they'd come through and do their thing, and they were ready to go. And the female crew comes through, and they're a little bit more efficient on cleaning, and they've been a little bit more. They get more attached to the animals and things like that. So I think it really helps the animals which is why we want to give back to them too and help them with this program that we've developed to give them something to look forward to, and maybe get an opportunity to not end up back on the inmate crew in the future.
Absolutely. Years ago, I worked inmates on the side of the road,
Sure.
and we pulled up on a road there in the north end, and we got out of the truck, and this potbelly pig just came running from the house towards the road, towards the truck. And I had one of the inmates, he jumped up on the back of the truck, he says, "Captain, what kind of dog is that?" I said, "That's not a dog, man, that's a pig." But no, they're a great asset to have there at the shelter. And you mentioned something a minute ago that caught me by surprise, I guess, when I was over there a couple of weeks back. The diseases that can run through the shelter and the precautions that you have to take. I really hadn't thought about some of those things.
Right.
And you mentioned what? Don't be a formite or
a fomite.
A fomite. Yeah, don't be a fomite.
Yeah. So we try to teach our staff. We try to teach. It's really hard. The facility that we have was not designed for what this community needs and what they want to do. So we have, as you know, you walk into our adoption area. There's 72 kennels with maybe 100 dogs in them. And each time you touch one of those kennels, touch one of those dogs, and go to the next one and touch it, you may have moved something from one kennel to the next and expose that animal to a potential illness. Most of the animals that we get in haven't been vaccinated. They haven't seen vet care. So that's why we vaccinate as quickly as they come in. The staff is trained to. We like to say that we try to get all the vaccinations on board the animals when they come in before that fourth paw hits the floor. We're not always successful in that. Some of them don't want to get vaccinated when they first come in, as you can imagine. Some of them don't feel like that's a good idea right now.
Right.
So we let them have a day of rest before we get it in. But for most part, we try to do all the things to prevent illness from spreading through the facility. It's challenging with that facility. It's challenging with the number of animals we have. When you're facing these overcapacity issues, it's even more challenging. But training the staff and training the inmate crew and training the volunteers are all ways that we try to prevent spreading illness through the facility. Mm-hmm. And we had to train them too not to carry that stuff home.
Sure.
As an employee, as you can imagine, most of our volunteers and employees have pets at home too. And so we all talk about don't wear your uniform, in your house. Make sure you use the proper decontamination techniques on your uniform, your shoes, things like that before you go home. But there's a lot of illnesses or challenges. I've got many peers that are struggling with disease outbreaks in their facility, and I am going to knock on wood a little bit. But we have been between the inmate crew and my staff, they've been really good about keeping a giant outbreak out.
That is something to be very proud of.
Yeah.
And again, I never dawned on me.
Yeah.
Until you're there hearing it and listening to it.
We had. If y'all remember, we ended up removing a lot of animals from Beggs Lane when they had when they had to remove everybody from there because of the contamination issues or whatever. And we got several dogs from there that were parvo positive litters of puppies and things, and so we had to work to contain that, and that becomes real problematic when you get animals in, because again, they haven't been vaccinated. We don't have a big isolation space where you can work with that, so containing those kind of issues and keeping them from spreading through the facility. So we had to prepare for that, and our guys go to a lot of dirty houses and bad environments and all that stuff they can bring home. Not just, and I tell the staff all the time, we're not just worried about risk of disease spreading through the shelter to the other animals. We also, a lot of them are zoonotic, so we have to worry about them spreading to the staff itself, because there are some issues with exposure and things like that can affect people.
What are I know you have a lot of stories. I think some by the animal shelter and the library, they have the best stories, the craziest stories anyway.
Yeah.
But I know y'all deal with a lot of different types of public, and people are passionate about their animals, and you have the ones that come in and I want to adopt a dog, which is great. Right. But are you really ready to adopt a dog? I know y'all try to walk folks through some of that. And my latest puppy. I think you brought him Christmas a year ago.
Right.
And she would fit in this hand right here.
Right.
And now she's 62 pounds of a big baby, but she's sweet as the day is long.
Right.
And I think
they probably told you she was going to stay small too, right?
Oh yeah, she's only going to get
Yeah. That's the way it always happens. You never know. That's one thing I tell everybody. They ask me, and I'm like, I have no idea what it's going to turn out like at the end. If it's a puppy now, you don't know.
Well, she was our third. We got all three of our dogs come from the animal shelter, and they've been the best dogs.
I've always said that, I've done this, my career wasn't just here. I've been run shelters before and was in the pet industry before that and the retail side, but worked with a lot of rescue organizations and shelters in our communities, in all the communities I've ever worked in. And I've always said that there's something about adopting an animal from a shelter. Those animals seem to appreciate it.
Yep.
And really are some of the best animals I've ever seen have been adopted. I've dealt with purebreds, I've dealt with all kinds of things, but the I call them Pensacola pups here, but the mixed breeds that you get from a shelter tend to be just some of the best family members that you can get.
Yeah, they win you over quickly.
They do.
They really do. They win you over quickly.
But one thing I want to touch on too, when you talked about the staff and meeting the animals and things like that. As we've talked about before, the shelter. We just talked a minute ago about there's 72 kennels and there's maybe 100 dogs in that. Talking about dogs, same with cats too.
Right.
They're sometimes it's hard to meet them at the shelter. So one of the things that's really important for us and the way we've developed our staff and trained our staff is they get a lot of opportunity. Downtime is puppy time or playtime, and they get in there and get to know these animals so that when somebody from the public comes in, it's real easy to get overwhelmed when you walk into the adoption area, and you know, you've been through there.
Absolutely.
So when you walk into where the animals, particularly where the dogs, where they're available for adoption, it's real easy to get overwhelmed by all that. So our staff, if you get overwhelmed by that or you come to the shelter, I highly recommend talking to the staff and telling them what your lifestyle is, letting them do a little interview with you, so to speak, to figure out what kind of dogs, and they can tell you which dogs would be good matches for you. Our staff is well trained at matchmaking and helping you complete your family. So it's really important for us to ask people to do that, because I hate it when people come in and you can tell they got overwhelmed by it and they just walked out and whatever. There really is, and you don't even have to go back there. You could ask the staff, stop at the front desk and say, hey, I'm looking for I'm kind of lazy, couch potato dog, and I need something, or couch potato, I need a dog that fits that lifestyle, or I like to go running every morning. They'll know which ones to match you up with, and who's good with kids, who's good with, cats, all those kind of things. They try to know. They can't know everything.
Sure.
So,
No, that's awesome. So you get a lot of calls for dogs running loose.
yeah.
I know we spent a lot of time working those cases. Tell me a little bit about some of the challenges you face with those calls.
There's a lot. We did last calendar year, we worked over 11,000 calls with our officers.
Wow.
That's a lot of calls. And we cover city of Pensacola and the entire county as well. So there's a lot of ground to cover for those calls. The other thing that's really important to us, public safety is a big priority for us. So, and then animal safety from there. So we prioritize our calls in different ways. And we have to go in those orders. We can't it doesn't matter if somebody called this morning or if they called 3 weeks ago. If that dog call this morning that dog potentially, or a cat could potentially injure somebody, or somebody's been bitten, we're gonna have to go get that animal first before we get the one that came in a couple weeks ago. Also, a lot of times when you go to these stray calls, the animal's not there. So it's important, so we've gone there, but we didn't find anything. We talked to some neighbors, see if called the original caller back and ask if the animal's still out there, if they've seen it lately. So it's challenging from that perspective, and I think people really don't understand the amount of calls, not just the volume of calls, but how difficult. We took 5 bite dogs in our facility yesterday, and every one of those was a priority call, and so that and those officers are, that usually requires more than one officer to respond. We had a couple of animal attacks on other animals, and so those again require more officers than one. So our officers get tied up, and those calls can take a lot more time than responding to a stray. But again, we had to prioritize those calls for public safety. Then we get the animal cruelty calls, a dog that's starving or could be injured, things like that. So it's challenging from the stray, just the roaming dogs, because a lot of times, by the time we can get around to that call or get to that call, it's not there anymore.
Right.
Which is why I encourage callers, please tell us whose dog it is if you know whose dog it is. Our officers will be happy to go remind them that their dog needs to stay inside,
Sure.
Can't be roaming the neighborhood. If they don't take that first reminder fairly well, we'll be happy to give them a citation to make that reminder a little more understood. Because that's typically, most of your callers know that dog comes from, you may not know the person's name, but it comes from this house, or I've heard it comes, our officers don't have any issues knocking on the door and asking somebody, hey, and if you can take pictures of it, even better, so we can match it to the dog to the owner. Because we really want to stop that. One thing that I do not have a record of, but we record them as calls, but we haven't recorded them very well as impounds yet, is we pick up a lot of dogs that are loose and we take them back home. And I think a lot of people don't know that we really don't want the animals coming in the facility. The facility is always over capacity. It's crowded. That's another thing when we're trying to figure out our call priorities. Can we even get those animals into the facility today? How many, how full is it? Because it's, as you've seen it, it can get really full, and it's there's nowhere else to put them. When I tell people, hey, I don't have another empty kennel to put them, there are times where there is nowhere else to put them. Right. I'm not just saying that because we don't want to. It's literally there's no space. But so what we've started doing is, if we can't, all our officers carry a microchip scanner with them. They're always checking for tags, and they're always asking neighbors, hey, do you know who this dog belongs to? And if we get that opportunity, instead of bringing that dog into the shelter, we drop it off at the house and return it to that owner, to that family. And hopefully it's a one-time thing, but we're going to start recording it so we know if it's a repeated offense, right, so we can address it from that way too. We do bounce officers around a little bit from different areas, so sometimes they don't. Some of your officers, they work that same area for months and months and months. They'll know that dog, become familiar with it, but that's not necessarily the case. If you're shuffling different officers into different things. That dog may have been picked up last week, but it was by a different officer. So we try to do that.
Tell me about your adoption efforts and promotions, and how many, because I saw the stats the other day. It is a large number of adoptions and return to owners and some other things that you guys do. Yeah. They're large, they're big numbers. I was shocked. They
are big numbers. We're taking, I think, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but well over 1,000 adoptions. Almost, I think it was close to 1,500 adoptions last year. Right. A lot of return to owners, and the several hundred return to owners. And again, I'm not recording those that we're returning in the field, which is something I want to make sure we record, just so everybody knows kind of how many. Because that's another dog we touched, another cat we touched. When right, we get those to return to owners, you don't get very many cats returned to owners, but dogs are pretty big. And our team, one of the things I'm really proud of them is they make a huge effort to get these animals back home with their owners. Whether it's the field team, that animal welfare officer that picks up a dog in the field and takes it back home, catches it for a microchip. They're scanned so many times as they go through. When they move in our facility, we're trying to scan them and make sure in case somebody missed a chip. And we're contacting the owners. We're sending them letters. Just yesterday, I directed an officer to go, hey, we couldn't get a hold of somebody that's dog was picked up for a bite case, and we had it. It was a minor bite on a situation, but we had it for its 10-day hold, and nobody could get a hold of them. I asked officer to go by the house and knock on the door and make sure they're okay, and see if they still wanted to get their dog back, or what that scenario was. So we make every effort to get those dogs home. They're going through Facebook has a lot of social media, different social media sites too, have a lot of lost and found listings. And I'm always getting staff call me and go, hey, don't we have that dog over there, particularly the field officers, or I think I picked that dog up, and we'll check and see and try to match those up too. So I think that's why our return to owner numbers get better all the time, because they really work hard to get them back to their owners.
Yeah, we promote responsible pet ownership. I mean,
absolutely.
You made a choice to have a pet. You can't just take it and just drop it off, or drop it
right,
off in the street somewhere. I mean,
right. And we made some efforts. A lot of times we have challenges with, again, our capacity issues are what our capacity issues are. There's only so many animals you can fit in the building. It's just like anything else. But we make efforts to even help people that can't keep their animals, or call about that, to match them up with rescues or organizations that might be able to help them. We put in the JoJo's Paws Pet Pantry in the lobby. They're there 3 days a week for people that are just maybe running short on funds for food and things like that. We provide food. Sometimes they have other supplies that people might need, so that they can keep their animals. Because the big goal for us is to keep the animal in the home. That's the best place for it. It's not the shelter is not the place for it. So keeping those animals in the home, we're even working with the health department once a year to do vaccination clinics, so people make sure they get their dogs and cats vaccinated. That's been really successful, and we expect to do that again in September. So
that's interesting. I would venture to say the general public probably doesn't know that we have those resources, or try to provide those food, correct, or blankets or toys, or I've seen even some treats over there. I think I saw. And there were some people bringing stuff in while we were there.
We get a lot of donations and stuff that we can, some of it's stuff we use at the shelter, and some of it's stuff that we give to JoJo's Paws, or to help people. The officers carry some of that stuff in their trucks as well, so that if they run into somebody in the field and they need to help them out, they hand it. They have some handouts for that as well. And again, we're trying to get people, help them get back on their feet and do their thing.
Yeah, you implemented something this past budget cycle with food, with
Right.
the type of food that we feed over there, but partnering with the supplier.
Right.
And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we had been purchasing through a distribution company of food at the shelter, and food is pet food, as everybody knows who owns a pet, and you know,
Yep.
it has gotten very expensive. Well, it's not just expensive for individuals, but when you're feeding 300-400 animals a day, it gets real expensive real fast. Hill's Science Diet has a shelter love program that they support shelters all over the country. We worked really hard to get this agreement put together, and it will save around $40,000 a year in feed. So that's all your taxpayer dollars. I'm always trying to be diligent with how we use our funding and those kind of things. I don't want to overspend on something, and so this was an opportunity that we had seen for a while. It's a better food for our animals than what we were feeding. No matter what shelter we operate, and I advise peers all over the country that are taking over new shelters and things, one of the first things I tell them is to get your dogs on a consistent diet. Your staff will be much more happy with you. It's a whole lot easier to clean a kennel where the dog gets the same food consistently, things like that.
Yeah, because it upsets their little tummies.
Absolutely, and cleaning that is not fun.
No, not at all.
But this has given us a consistent diet to provide to the animals, which again, we were doing that before, but it's a better diet than we were providing. We'll feed a lot less food than we were feeding before, and again, it's a cost savings just on the front end is significant. So I expect this to be a huge win for Escambia County and the animal shelter.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Anytime you can save that kind of money.
Yeah,
it's huge. But it goes unnoticed sometimes.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important. I think it's
to say it. As a director, one of the things that I've always been prided myself on is I've built a team that really cares about the county's money. We're not going to waste money. We're not going to. And I think as I sit in those director meetings and I look around those director rooms and talk to the other directors for the county, I think we have a lot of those on our staff throughout the county that are diligent. They spend it like it's their own.
Absolutely.
And so they're not wasteful and things like that. And I've been in other organizations that they didn't care. I watched an organization tell me one time when I was in the private sector that didn't want to pay the medical bills on the animals. They wanted me to cut my medical budget, but then they wanted to put up $40,000 worth of blinds in the windows that nobody used. And it doesn't make sense. No. So we use it so I think, like I said, for us, I know my team is always they're looking at what's best for how we utilize the money, how does it benefit the animals, things like that. So.
You and Kevin Monfrida put together a special response team, or emergency response, if you will.
Yeah. I had to give Kevin more credit for that than I get to take. That's one of those things you find good people. Surround yourself with good people, and they'll do the work. I am proud of that disaster team. My background a little bit with responding with the ASPCA and HSUS and American Humane Association. I've responded with a lot of those to disasters and done large scale animal cruelty cases and had a specialty in hoarding. But disaster is kind of one of those things that I've always been proud of. I wanted to have a good disaster plan here. Kevin took it even farther, and we built this disaster team that's not only beneficial to Escambia County, but basically all our surrounding areas. He's got a type 2 animal search and rescue response team that he's built. We've been fortunate enough with the ASPCA to get several. We're on our third grant, I think. So when you drive by the shelter and you see all those trailers and those boats and all those things, the ASPCA paid for those. It didn't come out of county dollars. Right. But we can respond pretty much anywhere, and they're trained to do slack water rescue. They're trained to do large animal rescue. They lift horses when they're down. They've trained for a lot of things, and those boats, like I said, we've got tons of equipment out there. This year's grant, we're actually adding a mobile shelter. As you know, we've been able to pull. Here, I can put up 2 shelters for animals if we get hit a direct hit here. I can set up the Bay Center, and I can set up in the north part of the county at that school. And it's not coming to me right now which school it is, but we can set up 2 side-by-side animal shelters quickly. We got 2 trailers out there loaded and ready to go. We start them. It's I don't know what it is, 70-something days till hurricane season, so we're already rolling. I know, I don't want to tell you because it hurts your feelings. But we start getting prepared for that. We get those trailers loaded. We make sure all the inventory is back up to par and everything's in there. but his response team has those too. And now we're getting a third trailer that we're putting together that would be somewhere if we had to assist a neighboring county, that we could go over there and basically set up a shelter. And, give me a barn, give me give me something with a cover over it, and I can build you an animal shelter to hold animals for a while. Very temporary. This is crate system. It's not something you could use for long-term housing, but for in a disaster. Right. So, like I said, I'm real proud of Kevin and the rest of the ASAR team that we put together. They've done a fantastic job, and I'm real appreciative to ASPCA for supporting that, to commissioners for letting us do it, and yourself for supporting it. We're going to do a bunch of training again this year. I think they're going to do some swiftwater training, and they do a whole bunch of ropes rescue training this year too.
And you're with fire in that too, right?
Yeah, so a lot of the public safety team, mostly from fire, has come over and gone through our training as well. So they've got teams ready to go, and we can partner up with them when needed if there's an emergency.
That's awesome. That's
we're good
awesome.
to go. As a matter of fact, fire's used it a couple of times without calling us. Not saying we got our feelers hurt, but they've used it a couple of times without calling for Kevin to rescue some horses and whatnot. So I appreciate that they got to use the training and all that. Absolutely. They didn't even need us, kind of hurt our feelers, but we're good.
Well, y'all trained them up.
That's right. That's right. We'll take a little credit in there. We helped get the training here.
Throughout the Escambia counties, we're here to serve the public.
Right.
A lot of public service, a lot of front facing to the public. And one of the greatest tools you can have in your toolbox is great interpersonal skills.
Right.
And dealing with the public, especially with animal services. It's kind of like code enforcement. The people may not always be happy to see you when you roll up. But another area that we have that we're covering is Pensacola Beach,
right?
Which is its own unique environment out there throughout the summer and throughout the season. And you really have to have great interpersonal skills to work those two dog parks. And I will say, for those who don't know, the beach is not dog friendly everywhere.
Right.
We have two dog parks, one on Fort Pickens, one on Villa de Luna.
Right.
And they're pretty sufficient, really. But I know you're running into a lot of folks on vacation, for instance.
Sure.
They're not trying to break any rules, but they're maybe just not knowledgeable. And so your officer has to kind of explain to them, the perimeters out there.
Yeah, and so the partnership out at Pensacola Beach has been great with Santa Rosa Island Authority. We've got an officer that's assigned out there that exclusively works beach calls and island calls. The dog parks are a challenge. They can always be a challenge, and you're checking for, they still need to be on a leash. They have vaccination records. So the officer's there to just remind people what the violations are and make sure, because like you said, a lot of them aren't from here. They don't have any idea what Escambia County code is or state statutes are or anything like that. They also have to patrol not just in the dog parks, but up and down some of the other areas because people are outside the dog parks, and remind them that we have a dog park at either end of the island and they need to go to there if they want to have their dog with them out at the beach. So yeah, it can be challenging, and some people, think they can take their dog everywhere. I mean, you've been out on the weekends, you'll see them at the stores and all those kind of things too, and so I think it's a great, but the island can be different.
Absolutely.
The way you have to interact with people, and I'm real proud of we just put a new officer out there, and I think she's going to be fantastic. She told me it was her dream job, so so she's excited about going out there, and she'll have those interpersonal skills, and I think it'll be great for the island.
Absolutely.
And I think it's going to be good.
I think so. So I know we've been talking for a little bit, but before we wrap up, tell us what you see in the future down the road there for the animal shelter.
Well, there's a lot of things. So one of the things for us as when I became the director of animal welfare, I talked to a lot of people, and I said, there's a lot of things we can do in this building. There's a lot of things that we can make and the animal welfare department, and then it was animal services and the shelter. And there's a lot of things we can do to make it better, but it's also going to require community assistance and partners and things like that. We struggle a little bit sometimes with partners and the things that we've tried to put together. I know this community really desperately needs a low-cost spay-neuter program. We're working diligently. I've got a couple of smaller projects going on that, but I think that's something that we're going to launch some level of. It is not going to be building a giant vet building and a clinic and things like that, but I think there's a way that we can help through some partnerships. But it's going to have to be something that is Escambia County run, not run by another partnership, and we're doing it that way. It's something I think we need to make sure we have some control of. So when things, if we set the structure in place, then we can make sure that when things are not working, it's our responsibility to figure out and make it work. So I think we've got some low cost options coming up. We're doing some stuff. Y'all were kind enough to. We're working with an organization, Sipping for Strays, that is doing. They get together and have a drink or two and gather funds up, and then they use those funds to pay for low cost spay neuters, and the officers, they're actually free to the people that are given, and they've allowed our officers to give out vouchers. Our officers encounter the people in most need, right?
Right.
They're the ones that are struggling, people who need their animals spayed or neutered. A lot of people have asked about us doing why doesn't this community have a spay neuter ordinance that requires people to spay or neuter their animals? But you also have to have something for them to be able to do it. It's hard to put in something to enforce if you don't have a place for them to go, or if they can't afford to do it, it makes it difficult. So I think before you even start talking down those roads, you have to talk about how do we address that. When you took over as a county administrator, we had some conversations about, everybody knows the cat issue here. There's a ton of feral cats, and I don't even call all of them feral. There's a lot of outdoor cats here. That's a better way. We like to call them community cats. But TNR programs were faltering here. When I got here in 2014, they were just approving the ordinance for even being able to do the trap neuter release programs. But nobody, you have to do it right. You have to target a certain area. You have to do, if it's going to be successful. So we've taken over some of that and dealt with some of our problems. We do, I think in those statistics we showed you the other day that we had done a couple of hundred, maybe 300 TNR surgeries last year, and I can pull those numbers up again, but it's well, I'm real proud of that. Our veterinarian she loves doing those kind of things, and I think it's helped the neighborhoods that we've been able to go into. So what we're looking for is hot spots and trying to address those things. We're going to expand that program out this year. I talked to one of the county commissioners the other day about some things we want to do in his area, and what we really want to do is look for, we're looking at our target spots, where our problems are, and how can we address that before they become problems that we have to go pick up the dog. How do we prevent them from ever becoming that? Areas where dogs are running loose in parks, and I know Michael Rhodes has this challenge a lot with parks, where dogs are running loose, off leash, things like that. How do we enforce those? But there's other areas where they're just running loose. How do we get people to start using leashes and things like that? So we're going to be a lot more community forward over the next few years. That's our next big focus, is how educational programs, assistance programs, things like that. We're really looking forward to that. And
I think moving forward, part of the discussion has to be a new facility.
Absolutely.
It just has to be.
When I was hired, we were already aware. When I was hired, it was brought to my attention that the facility would have to be replaced. And it's unfortunate, the facility design is just not designed for what this community needs or what we want to do as an organization. Again, you can't put 100 dogs in 72 kennels, all open, not climate controlled, not in an area where you can prevent diseases from spreading. I mean, they're literally right next to each other. They're staring at each other. New modern sheltering design, you don't even put animals across from each other. The stress levels of staring at each other and the something sneezes, it can go that far. As we learned from COVID, the sneeze can travel. So the spacing that we've got out there is probably not good enough for that. Things like that. So the facility needs a lot of things, and there's no way to take the current facility and give it a facelift or a makeover. It's just and unfortunately, the people who are, I don't know who to. I'm not trying to blame anybody, but it was not well taken care of before we got here. They didn't use the cleaning materials appropriately, so a lot of deterioration of the facility was caused by just not proper care. And so that creates problems that aren't fixable when you are over capacity already. You can't take a kennel apart and fix it all and resolve all those issues and keep it. You have to let new paint and things sit for days and weeks to cure, and you just can't do it. We don't have the space or the capacity for that.
Well, animal services is about like it's about like every other department we have. The growth in Escambia County it's just been expansive, and Beulah's blown up with growth. And I will give one plug. I don't know if you know Doc out at the Animal Hospital of Beulah. I call him Doc. But he's our family vet, and he and his staff are just fantastic out there on 9 Mile Road. But, we got Harley Boy, and he turns out he has Cushing's.
Oh, okay.
But we didn't know that. He started acting a little funny, and Doc was able to figure it out.
That's awesome.
He got it set up with the right meds and such, and he's living a happy, healthy life for now, anyway. it's a good vet. You know, when you're a pet owner, is worth a lot. And
Yeah, and you know that's one of the things that I always try to say to as people come through. We don't recommend one over the other. It's not no, we're not in a position to do that, but we do recommend that they get one. And I think it's important that we're adopted animals that we don't have a lot of history on.
Right.
So you need to get with a vet, and you need to get that appointment set up. And we encourage them to do that within 7 to 10 days. Animals that leave our facility, we don't know what all they've been through. If you need a trainer, there's great trainers here too. There's good veterinarians. There's a lot of great veterinarians here. So that they need to make sure they do all that. And that's we do provide them a list of all of them. So we encourage them to do that. And I think it's important to have those relationships. If you're going to be a responsible pet owner, those are things
absolutely
to do. That's one thing too, talking about, I didn't mention earlier on the projects that we're working on, is that we are keenly aware that we talked about why isn't there an ordinance for mandatory spay neuter, but we are keenly aware that there are some issues in our ordinance that are outdated, need to be or unclear, things like that. So we have been working with the county attorney's office to basically take that and basically do a rewrite of the entire chapter 10, which is the animal chapter in the county ordinance. It is almost complete. I've spent a lot of time on it, and it's not just
awesome.
me. It's a bunch of our team. Kevin Manfreda, some of our leadership on the animal control side, the animal welfare officer side, we've worked together, and even the staff at the shelter. There's some of them that have some input on that. Our veterinarian is great about getting that. And then I give a shout out to Dawn Harris, my aide. She's been with the county. You were at the thing where we presented her 25-year Volkswagen bus toy. But Dawn's been with us for 25 years. She's been through a lot of things, so she's always great. She's my sounding board on some of those things, and she's done all the jobs, and as far as the administrative job, she's answered that phone. She's done all those things, so she can give me a lot of input on something like that too. So,
yeah, those employees that bring a lot of that knowledge and history with them, they're invaluable, really. They can go back. Well, back in 1982, we tried this, and this is how it worked out or how it didn't work out.
It was funny. We were talking. I met with the new IT director, and I know he's been with the county in some other capacities as well. But I met with him yesterday, and one of the things I didn't realize it till a few years ago. I looked around the director room and realized I had gone from being the new kid in the room to one of the old guys in the room, and I don't know how that happened. And I always feel like the new guy sometimes anyway, but because I always try to stay with fresh ideas and things. But also, I appreciate how much each of those directors form such a tight knit team and help each other, because some of that information is invaluable too, and so I always try to share what I know, but we always get it from, and that's one of the things I've appreciated you being a county administrator. You've seen all this stuff as coming up through the ranks, so you know what our challenges are, and I think it makes it easier to have those discussions. So I appreciate that. It's been great for us.
Yeah, all we have is each other, man.
That's exactly right.
I say that a lot.
And some days it feels like that's all there is too.
Right,
It really does.
Absolutely. Well, John, I appreciate the time, man. I appreciate the conversation. Is there any last thoughts you want to share?
I would say this. The one thing we got a lot of. We talked about projects coming up and things like that, and I'll keep introducing those as they come to fruition. When we were talking about a new facility, we did the commissioners approved and we did the feasibility study for a new facility. We have an idea of what that's going to cost. I expect that to come before the board shortly. Because we have to do that. Right. But I appreciate the support for it. But this new design will make it much more conducive to adoptions. It'll make it a lot easier to come in and visit. It's pod design, so we can shut down one portion of it, or the public can see just 10 animals instead of seeing 100 animals, and they won't be so overwhelmed. But it also helps us with disease. Like, there's a lot of thought process that's gone into to the design of the new facility and how we want to put it together. So I'd appreciate the support for that. But in addition to that, it's still going to take a while to get there, so don't wait till that gets built to come adopt. We've got great animals there. Come in and come visit and talk to the staff and come get some critters. So
absolutely. And the one request I get from different departments throughout the county is, when's John going to bring the puppies back?
Yeah,
when's John going to bring the puppies back?
We love that program. I think there's a couple of things that we want to do. We want to start bringing the dogs back out to the different departments. I think all the departments love that, us coming to visit and bringing a few animals with us. I think we want to do that more in the public too. I think sometimes going to the people, because the shelter's so overwhelming, going to the people. We will be doing some more. I've got one coming up with Cumulus Radio and the good folks at Wolfgang and for playground. I don't know if you know this or not. We do Potty Gras. We've been the beneficiary of the Potty Gras event every year for the last couple, 3 years. And every year we come up with a big project to do with those funds that they raised. That's something outside of what we wouldn't normally use tax dollars for, what we wouldn't, something different. And so if you've been to the shelter, and I know that we have a front play yard that we do a lot of meet and greets and let the public introduce to animals. We're replacing all that playground equipment. So early in May, I think it's May 3rd, but don't hold me to that. I don't have it in front of me. But we're going to do a ribbon cutting on the new playground equipment being put in and all that. And I'm very excited about that. And so just trying to do fun stuff like that. So if you come in and just say, I'm looking for a couch potato dog, they can bring it out there and you don't have to go in and hear all the noise and racket. But I do appreciate our teams that support us and things like that. So
Absolutely. Well, hey, man, I've appreciated the time, appreciate the conversation.
no problem. You know, I can talk for hours about what I do. It's passionate. It's one of those things that when you love something, it makes it easy to talk.